Rock Hard Radio 1 presents from New York City, Rock Hard with Jay Conroy.
All right, as promised, here with us on the show tonight, Rob Liotti. Am I pronouncing that right, Rob?
Absolutely.
All right. It's nice to meet you. Thanks for coming in, doing the show, or coming to Skype and doing the show, I should say.
Anytime, Jay.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. You're from where?
I'm originally from Ohio, and I've lived in Charleston, South Carolina for a number of years. A beautiful place, one of the top cities in the country, and it's gorgeous, and it's warm.
What's it like today down there?
Today is mid-50s, but I got to tell you that this is some of the coldest weather we've ever had this year, and it's ugly when it's cold here.
Yeah, I'll bet people aren't as used to it, I guess.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, we've been getting hammered up here, but it's not. Other parts of the country have it a lot worse than we do. So, but it's cold. And in New York City, it's a pain in the ass because the snow just piles up on the sidewalk, and the garbage doesn't get picked up, and cars don't move, and sidewalks are more narrow. It drives everybody crazy. So
I went to the snow belt up in Columbus, Ohio, so I get it. I know.
Yeah. Okay, so you're an AC/DC fan, obviously, and you originally, tell me a little bit about yourself as far as you started off, or you still are, in an AC/DC cover band.
How that really started, I started out as a fan like most of us.
Mm-hmm.
And, that fanship, if you will, began a long time ago. And for whatever reason, there was some affinity there for that music, and I've been into Australian rock and roll, and I really liked it. I liked the rhythm and just how it sounded and what it was. Just the same reason a lot of people, fell in love with that.
Right.
And back in the day, I was in a band called Malice, and I remember I had, back in the day when the sound systems were huge. Where I lived in my apartment, I had the entire band sound system as my stereo, and I had a turntable up on top of the system. And my guitar player was coming to pick me up for work, or not for work, but for rehearsal one day. And I was singing, I think, Live Wire, along with the stereo at the time. It was vinyl turntable, old school, and I hear a knock on the door, and he pounds on the door, and I flung open the door, and he said, "You're the new singer." And I said, "What?" So apparently at that time there was some appreciation for my likeness in vocal styling as Bon Scott. So as uncanny as that is, it happened by happenstance. It was accidental, but it just happened to be in my vocal range. So that's kind of how it all started.
Which is very interesting because Bon Scott has not only a high vocal range, but a very unique voice. I read him describe himself something to the effect of a screaming weasel or something,
right?
That tone that he has in his voice. So certainly not an easy voice to do,
right?
By far.
Right.
Okay, so now do you still have the current band together?
The band was called TNT, and it started back in 2004. And we actually are planning a reunion concert of all the original members. We're trying to book a date in May for that here in Charleston, because people are missing the live music. I've been so involved with the film for the past couple of years that people want to hear the band. So we're planning with that. But you're right. His voice is very uncanny. It's very unique, and how and why I was able to do that, I don't know. But it happened, and it was a beautiful thing, and people like it, and so there you go.
So now let's talk about the movie, because this is why you're here. You are working on a movie called, is it The Legend of Bon Scott?
It's called Bon Scott: The Legend of AC/DC Unauthorized.
Okay. Obviously, you have a huge love for Bon Scott. What brought this idea to the table? What made you say, you know what, we want to do a movie, you know, I want to play Bon Scott in the movie? How did that all come about?
Well, we really weren't the first to dip our toe in the pool on this. Back in 2008, there was a production company in Australia that had spoken with a director, I think a rather famous director in Australia, who had done some film over there by the name of Eddie Martin. And they had planned to develop a film about Bon Scott. And at that time, I guess when the word came out, I started to get a lot of email from fans and said, hey, we hear that there's this movie coming out about Bon Scott. We think you'd be ideal to play the part. Would you be interested? And these are fans. And I said, well, okay, I don't know anything about it, but sure. You know, there would always be interest in that. So I think a number of people contacted that production company in Australia, and I had some contact with them, and then their project basically fizzled. So I really took a change of direction a couple of years ago. I sat down with a director that I know, and I said, look, this is what I want to do. And I've been a writer for a long time, and I put the pen to the paper and started. And the thing that was troubling about it, though, and the director's name is J.R. Getches, the first thing JR said to me when he met, he said, you look great. He said, you've been working out? And I said, sure. And he said, well, you're going to need to lose 20 pounds. And of course, when anybody tells you that, you're like, oh, God.
Yeah, right.
So 2 years later, I've lost about 42 pounds.
Wow.
But when you look at Bon Scott, obviously, those guys are diminutive. AC/DC and Bon Scott, they're all thin guys.
Right.
You got to do it. That's just part of it.
Yeah.
To do it right. So that's essentially how it began. So it's not that I hadn't thought of the idea before, Jay, but I took what was an existing, I guess, forethought out there, down under, and said, well, obviously they're not going to get it done, so I'm going to get it done.
Okay.
That's how it started.
So now, let me ask you this, where are you at now with the project?
Right now, the project officially is in the latter stages of development, and we are screenplays in place. There's a test trailer in place, and we are now ready to go look for the production money. We've had contact. I mean, I guess the most newsworthy news about production was that of NBCUniversal in London. I mean, that's the biggest production company in the world. But the problem that, after we met with NBCUniversal in London, and they had looked at the project for international television, but the problem is that Universal also owns AC/DC's music catalog now. So when NBCUniversal in London, the film division, went to, I'm assuming Los Angeles, I would guess, to NBCUniversal Music, then arose at least a conflict that turned out to bring letters from AC/DC from their lawyers. So that deal was quashed, if you will. And there have been a few other production companies that we've spoken to, but we really weren't to that stage at that point in time.
Right.
Now, films are a progression, so we've gone through the progression at this time where we're through the proper development, and now it's time to be able to present to a producer or an executive producer or a production company or a wealthy individual who just wants to be the executive producer. Here's what it is. Here's our proof of concept. Here's our screenplay. We're ready to go. And at that point, once you get your funding, then you go into pre-production after you're greenlit, and then off to the races you go.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, I did read about this issue with AC/DC. What do you say to, because I've been reading on the internet that AC/DC issued a cease and desist order on the movie, right, and also on the production of the movie. So based on what you just told me, And based on what I just read, where is it? The thing with NBC Universal, I understand. But moving forward, do you anticipate running into problems with AC/DC in the future?
Well, you know, that whole development of at least not legal action really, but heading in that direction. Although certainly cease and desist is a form of legal action.
Right.
Was not really unexpected.
Yeah.
You know, now we've come to the point where, you know, AC/DC and the Young Brothers in particular are, you know, they're the richest entertainment family in Australia. They're powerful folks.
Mm-hmm.
I think some members of the band have different personalities, maybe than Angus and Malcolm. Clearly, it's Malcolm's band. It always has.
Right.
Always. I think they're strong-willed, strong-headed, and stubborn, and that's all good.
Right.
And I like their attitude, and I like their stick it to the man, you know, attitude that they've had.
Sure, for a long time. I mean, they're known for not doing interviews. I mean, they were very reluctant to putting their songs on iTunes until recently. So, right. I mean, I'm a big fan of theirs as well. So, yeah, I understand.
Me too. So, but I'm in a difficult position now because while I am a fan, an ardent fan, and I'm actually trying to pay tribute to somebody that is now a rock and roll martyr and that we lost prematurely and is very sad. I'm sure it was important to those guys. Now we're in a position where it's who can be more stubborn than who.
Right.
And you know, Malcolm Young is not the only hard-nosed asshole in the world.
Right.
And you know, people, in other words, we're all artists.
Right.
And we are delving into an endeavor to tell a story. We're paying homage to somebody that was a musical hero, not just with AC/DC. He had more of a career than just AC/DC, but clearly that was the most integral part of his career.
Mm-hmm.
But if AC/DC believes that they're going to call the Dogs in New York, who is a very large, very powerful, probably the most powerful law firm, entertainment law firm in the country.
I read it came from New York City, yeah.
To quash our project that quite frankly is not infringing on them in any way, shape, form, or regard, it isn't going to happen. That's my position with them. So we're trying to do the right thing in many ways, but they have been overreaching in a lot of ways in as much as some of the demands that they've made or through their cease and desist. And I also, in fairness, need to add that Bon Scott's estate in Australia had about the same posture as AC/DC's attorneys in New York. Maybe not as terse, but had the same position that they weren't in support of what we were doing, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But that is why we said it is unauthorized.
Right.
So we're trying to do our due diligence to tell a story that, quite frankly, is comprised of all information that you've heard, that I've heard, that any fans who are fans of that band and have taken the time to listen. There's nothing new per se, but it's an adaptation, obviously, in docudrama form of Bon Scott's story.
Right.
So, forgive me for the long-winded answer. But
no, it's fine.
It's really important that I think people understand, including the guys at the other end, that
right.
We're going to tell the story, and it's, if we can tell stories like that, you're really stepping all over the First Amendment to start with. There are certain parameters that you have to stay within. You can't defame someone or violate their privacy or what have you, but clearly you have the ability to tell a story, and if you didn't, you know, e-television would be out of business.
Right. Okay, that being said, let me just play devil's advocate here, and I understand First Amendment and wanting to, speak yourself freely, but when that includes using someone else's likeness, do you feel that that still falls under the same category? I mean,
Well,
you could, like for instance, I don't think you would hear from anyone if you made what they call a loosely based movie, on Bon Scott. So, using the actual likeness, I mean, how do you feel about that as far as First Amendment? Do you think at all maybe they feel like, well, it's invading our privacy, or we really don't want to sign off on it, or if we wanted to do it, we'd do it ourselves, But again, the likeness thing, how do you feel about that?
One thing important to look at in cases like this are precedents. And in the 9th Federal Judicial District, which New York falls under, where there have been a lot of precedent-setting cases in regards to documentarians telling stories, such as judges have consistently ruled in favor of documentarians, inclusive of First Amendment, likeness, fair use of music and other photographs and so on and so forth. So judges, I think, in support of the First Amendment and one's artistic expression rights, are not trying to trample over bands such as AC/DC or artists like that, but are trying to give everyone an opportunity to their artistic expression, as long as you don't damage someone's
reputation.
Correct. So in our case, although there has been very little disclosure of the actual screenplay, it's been seen by maybe a half a dozen people for obvious reasons. But there's nothing that really hasn't been public. So it's hard to damage someone when they've said it themselves. And the whole intent of the film is not to damage anyone anyway. Sure. It's good-hearted. It tells a true story, which is a beautiful thing. It tells it the way that it was or is. And so we feel good about the story. We feel good about me playing his role. We feel good about the public reaction thus far and the extensive coverage that it's received worldwide. But we're not going to allow, nor do I think that we should, we're not going to allow AC/DC, as much as I love the band, I'm not going to allow them to bully me out of engaging in artistic expression. That goes against what they're about too, and they know that.
Well, I certainly like your attitude, but now the next question that popped into my head is, they got a lot of money.
They do.
How long can you afford to fight them in court? Because something like that, I mean, look, it's funny, before you said, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm thinking to myself, I've been to divorce court a million times, family court, and I'm thinking, as many times as I've been here, I'm no lawyer. But, that being said, that kind of law is extremely complicated. So financially, how can you keep up the fight?
Well, thankfully...
And I love your attitude, man. I love it. Don't get me wrong. I'm like, I like that, the fight, but then all of a sudden it hit me. I went, well, wait a second. How can you pay to continue the fight?
Right. Well, I've been fortunate thus far that I've had some lawyers that have assisted with this, and they are also fans. I met with lawyers on Tuesday who are both musicians. They're both fans. They want to see the movie done. And what was funny about the meeting that we had, one of the attorneys, who I will leave unnamed at this time, said, this is a lot more interesting than the usual shit that comes in this office.
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah.
So this is kind of exciting. But one of the things that he said that's germane to our discussion here was that a lot of that chest thumping from attorneys such as those that I mentioned in New York, they do a lot of chest thumping and they do a lot of posturing and I understand they're trying to protect their client.
Right,
and
that's what lawyers do, yeah.
I appreciate that, and I want to be afforded the same protection. But you know what? There's something to be said about the richest entertainment family in Australia, and I do know that some members of the band do very good things for a lot of people from a philanthropy standpoint, which is terrific. But again, it all comes back to, do I have a right, and does High Voltage Productions have a right to produce an artistic expression? These guys are public figures. Bon Scott has since passed away. Their information is public. Their personas are public. And this has been tested time and again. And again, I don't want to be arrogant in my position.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be confident in saying that, in my opinion, we have a right to tell the story. We have a right to do within the parameters of the law, and properly have the ability to tell the story without bullying, legal bullying, which, for all intents and purposes, if somebody's got enough money, they can just throw so much paper at you that you are overwhelmed with legal fees, as you mentioned. But that is also not legal, and those are referred to as SLAP suits, which is an acronym, SLAAP, where simply one party is trying to overwhelm the other party, especially in David versus Goliath cases, overwhelm them legally with legalese and legal posturing and paper and court and litigation to quash a critic or run them into the ground, to keep it from happening. So if you take that position, which if they did, there's ramifications for that too. So it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You do what you do. I don't quit. I don't expect them to quit.
Right.
But again, I'm all about, I'm sure that you are, I'm all about them, and this was quoted in a magazine, but it was, one of AC/DC's primal attractions to people is their willingness of sticking it to the man, right?
Right.
Well, what's not cool is becoming the man. Don't be the man. Now.
You have a point. You definitely
Right?
have a point.
Don't be the man. I can't help that I sound like Bon Scott.
Right. Right.
I'm an actor. That's what I do.
Right.
So this is just an attempt to make people happy is really what it is. So when it gets ugly, it's...
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. Number one, before your firm contacted me, I said, you know what? I said, I had heard of this movie. I actually had Dave Evans on the show a couple of weeks ago.
Right. Yep.
And I mistakenly said to Dave, I said, hey, Dave, I heard there's an AC/DC movie being made. Are you involved in that? Not realizing the two things. And, Dave was like, no. And I said to myself afterwards, I know I heard something. Then I heard, from your company. And I said, that's where I've heard this. So I did hear about it.
Right.
And I did the research on it. And you guys, if there's one thing that you have gathered is worldwide press, for sure.
Absolutely.
And, I got to say, if this movie came out, I would go see it. Because I'm such a huge AC/DC fan.
Sure.
And, more so of a Bon Scott fan. I saw AC/DC with Bon Scott 6-7 times.
Right.
Right here in New York City. And, I saw them on their very last tour, opening for Ted Nugent at Madison Square Garden, Highway to Hell. It was incredible.
Right.
So, I love the band. I get it. But now that part being said, how does it work? And I meant to look this up, but how does it work if, okay, you win your suit and you are allowed to make this movie? How does it work in terms of the actual music? Because you might know about this with your lawyers, and it's great that you have friend lawyers helping you out, but
Right.
it sounds like they're not going to sign off and say, well, sure, use our actual recordings. So how does that work, and what would be your plan? Would you have your own band do it? Or are you trying to use the original recordings to start with? I guess I should ask that question.
That's a great question. And I know people say that during interviews, so I don't mean to use cliches. Jay, that's a great question.
Yeah.
It's a good question, and it's very relevant. So before I even engaged in writing the screenplay, I contacted Albert Productions in Australia, who's been DC's, label
forever, right?
Forever, since the beginning, and I informed them at that time and personally addressed it to Malcolm Young. Would you? And I'm paraphrasing, but would you inform Malcolm Young that this is the intent of the production company to make this film? We would respectfully ask for the ability to license their music if they are willing, and this is what we're going to do, and we wish them all the best and hope for the same in return. Paraphrasing, essentially. It was a very nice contact. I never heard back from them. Did I ever anticipate the ability to use AC/DC's music? Unfortunately, I would have to say no. I never anticipated being able to license their music. As unfortunate as it is, it was also just reality. They have been very steadfast in their position to prevent and preclude anyone from doing what we're trying to do. This has been attempted, I think, a few times. It has just never gone to the level that it has with us.
Right. So, given the choice, you would have liked to have used actual AC/DC recordings with Bon Scott.
Well, I think anybody in their right mind would want that. However, there's also reality. And reality is, I said before I even started to write it, and when I met with JR, I said, look, they're not going to license their music, and I know it, but I'm going to ask. Now, what's troubling to me as a fan and as an actor and trying to put something together that actually really does benefit them in a number of ways, which we can talk about in a minute, but what's troubling about it is that they'll license their music for a substandard reality show, but they won't license it for something that pays tribute to their fallen lead vocalist, who was very important to that band.
Have they done that? What song do they have on what?
I think there was a reality show about a tow truck company that used the song "Highway to Hell" as their theme.
Okay.
And they paid for what are called synchronization rights. So in a movie, when you license music, they'll have a music supervisor, and they'll license music from a publisher, who in this case would be Albert Productions, and they'll license the music to use through synchronization rights to use that music or some form of that music, depending on what the artist or publisher allows, and they can determine the cost to be a penny to infinity. I mean, they can name their price. So, that being said, I knew that they wouldn't allow licensure of their music, which is sad, but it's reality, and that's fine. So, the screenplay was written in a fashion as to not require use of their actual music in any form. Whether I recorded their music, none of their songs are going to be used in this film. Now, some people might say, well, then the movie's going to suck. But all I can say to those fans is that, give us an opportunity. There is a way to do it, and a way to do it effectively, and we wouldn't have come this far if we didn't kind of have that.
Sure. And you know what? I mean, I could see people saying, oh, well, then it's going to suck, but I also see how creativity could do a movie without the music, so,
Hey, J.R. Getches, who's a musician himself too, our director, he said having their music would it be nice in a way? Sure, it would be, but he said, it almost, the movie, Jay, it's not about AC/DC.
Right, it's about Bon Scott.
It is. And Bon Scott did other things besides AC/DC, but I think that's what most people care about, I put in quotation marks, but I think most people care about or identify him with that period of time, which is fine, I do too. But it's not all about that music. So that being said, JR commented that, in a way it almost makes it more interesting, because it lends more focus to him as the character and what we're trying to bring.
That's exactly what I was thinking when you said that. I said this would not be something I would just be kicking back and waiting for the songs. I would actually be engaged and watching it as a movie.
Well, how predictable would it be to send a guy out like myself in costume and the hair done and this and that and the other and the jean vest and the tattoos and look spot on and be very convincing, which is all wonderful, and you come out and bust into a whole lot of Rosie and it looks predictably just like it would. Is that, I mean, we've seen him, he did that.
Right.
We get that he can
do. Good point. That would be like a Lifetime movie,
It is, and it
Lifetime Network presents the story of Bon Scott,
right. Yeah. Well, and it cheapens.
They'll be suing me now.
Yeah. So in a way, it devalues, again, artistic license, or I shouldn't even use the word license, artistic expression in trying to portray, that's the whole idea here, is to portray this guy's aura, and that's the job. My job, to go out and sing and be convincing, that's not the challenge for me. That's easy. The difficult part was learning an Australian accent, losing 40 pounds, growing my hair, being convincing, learning his mannerisms, learning his cadence. All those things are what brings the character to life. We already know the songs. Everybody gets that. So there's a little more to it than that. And because it is docudrama, it lends itself to a true story, but through dramatic portrayal.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's exactly what it is. A lot of people have called it a biopic.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really what it is.
Well, let me ask you another question. That being said, and I know you don't want to give stuff away, but what is it that you're going to get across in the movie that I don't already know about Bon Scott?
I think what you have is AC/DC, and timing is always everything, isn't it? But they celebrated their 40th anniversary.
Right.
So you're talking about, what, 3 generations of fans, probably? Yeah. Okay, well, our generation of fans are very much in tune with AC/DC and Bon Scott. Kids, not so much. And a lot of people only identify with AC/DC through Brian Johnson.
Right. Okay, so that makes perfect sense. There's an audience out there that totally probably never even heard of him. So, yeah.
And the way that I think it's important, especially from a movie-making standpoint, to approach this is, what you're trying to do is you're trying to take an individual who doesn't know who the hell he is. They've heard of AC/DC. They've never bought a record. But they heard that the story might be interesting because the guy was a rock star and he died young of that tragic rock star death. And they want to learn something about this guy. So all of a sudden, they're watching the Super Bowl and they didn't think Bruno Mars was worth a shit. And all of a sudden, they're a fan.
Geez, everybody that comes on the show has been talking about Bruno Mars.
Bro, well, hopefully 1 or 2 people will talk about me. I don't know. That's all I'm trying to get. But no, but it's true, when he came out, I wasn't really a fan.
Right.
I saw him on Saturday Night Live. I was like, he's interesting. I kind of like it. He hits the Super Bowl, which is the best gig there is.
Yeah.
And he's juking like James Brown. It's a beautiful thing. I was like, okay, you got me.
Yeah.
So you want to be able to do that with a kid that maybe has heard of the band or heard the song TNT in the background and goes, oi, oi, that's cool. Now he gets to learn about the guy who sang it, the guy who wrote it, the guy's persona and who he was, and all of a sudden, they, AC/DC, have got another fan. Forget me, this helps them more than anybody else.
Right. No, totally understand it. It makes perfect sense. So now, where do you go from here? I mean, I know you're looking for backers. It's it's interesting. Twisted Sister, who is from this area, they're doing their own movie. they're looking for backers, you know.
Sure.
So you're looking for backers, but you know, beyond looking for backers, where are you at? I mean, can you continue to shoot more stuff, or are you just going to stay put with what you have for now until you get the backers? Where is the project at?
Well, when I said development, again, there's a progression for a film to do it right, and I only do things one way, and that's right, or I don't do it. So we've developed it to the point where now we need to go look for financial backing. Hey, how many movies get made that are garbage, and they spend a lot of money on them? Lots. How many movies don't get made that are good? Probably lots. Just like how many bands are out there that aren't famous that are really good bands?
I see them every night here. Yeah.
A lot.
Right.
So there is some luck involved, and there is some skill involved. The plus side of this particular project is if you put my name in the internet, or you put the title of the movie on Google, it's worldwide and it's everywhere.
Yes, it is.
It is. So so the project in and of itself, which has nothing so much to do with me or High Voltage Productions or the director or anybody else, it has to do with the viability of the story. The story is 35 years in the making. I have no idea why the Australians didn't make it up to now. All I know is that we have the most traction that anybody has ever had on this particular story. It's a hot commodity, it's a hot property. Now it's time probably that somebody will, I assume, hopefully step up and say, hey, I want my name on this project. And you don't know who it's going to be. It could be an NBCUniversal, or it could be a rich individual who is liquid enough to finance it and wants their name on it as executive producer.
Right.
You know, so that's kind of where it is. It's the same, and it's the same for anybody like Twisted Sister. And they certainly are a lot more name-worthy than I've been.
Right, and that's kind of why I brought it up. I'm like, because I was quite surprised, because I heard about the Twisted Sister movie, and you know, I'd been following the story, and then all of a sudden the money thing came out, and I was like, wow, I had no idea this was involved. I thought they were all set. You know.
Oh yeah, you've got to get the green light, and the green light is the money. Yeah. You know, the whole apparatus. Kind of the nice thing about where I live is that we have an entire production apparatus right here, which includes a 70,000 foot interior studio facility and all of the exterior. We can shoot this entire movie, even though the Australians might not like it. We can shoot it all right here.
That's a huge plus for you.
It is a huge plus. It's convenient, and it also saves a lot of money. You know, the budget is $5 million. That's not a paltry amount of money, but it's not a huge budget for a film.
Not at all.
You know, so and that gets it done. But that being said, somebody may come along and say, "Hey, I want it to be really great. I can do $8 million. That's your budget." Or somebody may come along and say, "Look, I can only do 4. That's it. That's all I can do," and you make it work. So financial backing has a lot to do with it, but also the viability of your product to start with has everything to do with it, because the investor is the person who needs to get their money back first.
Right.
And going about, when you talk about Twisted Sister and name recognition and so forth, I had a reporter ask me not too long ago. He said, "Rob, I've read about you all over the internet. It's just crazy how viral this has gone. It's been reported on every continent. What's it feel like to be famous?" And I said, "Famous? Oh, it feels great, but a check would be better."
Yeah. That's funny, and I always say, if I had the choice to be rich or famous at this point, I'll take the cash. See ya.
Cash is a good thing. Cash helps, but for me personally, again, it's an acting project. It's a passion for me. I'm only using the ability that God gave me to do it. And here's the other irony, and this is maybe why all this happened. Do you know, just a trivia question for you on ACDC, do you know what Bon Scott's father's name was?
I don't.
His name was Charles.
Okay.
Do you know what his father's nickname was?
No.
His nickname was Chick.
Chick?
Chick.
Okay.
which is a nickname for Charles.
Okay.
What do you think my father's name is?
Charles?
It is. What do you think his nickname is?
Chick.
Isn't that ironic?
That is ironic. I have never heard Chick as a nickname for Charles. Interesting.
It is, and maybe that's why all this happened. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I wish you the best of luck with it. We will certainly be keeping an eye on the situation. As I said, you know, when I first heard about it, I said, I would go see this. You know, I mean, I looked at it objectively and I said, as a fan, I would totally go see this. I said, but, you know, now there's this whole other, you know, thing involved with the lawyers and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, best of luck to you, Rob. And, you know, by all means, keep us posted. If there's any developments and get you back on the show, we'd love to do that.
I'd be happy to do it. Happy to do it.
All right. Thanks for talking with us.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, man.
You too.